Hey guys, welcome back to the Street Photography Podcast with me, Warren C. We want to start off with first saying, hey, I'm sorry guys. I know I'm trying to get 2 of these out a month, but we are already at the end of the month, or at least the middle of the month, and I haven't gotten an episode out. So that's today's episode. So hopefully you guys haven't been waiting too long, and hopefully you enjoy what I'm going to go over in the podcast today. So again, just for everybody to know, the Street Photography Podcast is about anything and everything around street photography, from gear to trends to who you're repping, and then a Q&A. So it normally goes off with me doing a quick intro, talking about what I think is trending or trend worthy and what you may think about it. Then we go over who you're repping, and that's a street photographer that is either well known or is known to your local area, or I talk about one that I follow in the different cities and areas and so forth, and how their street photography resonates with me, how I would plan on using it. And I might even do an episode on the YouTube channel of me shooting in the style of, like I did with Bill Rawhauser. So we go from that to then talking about gear in and around street photography. And not just gear in the sense of how we would use that gear, or should we use that gear in our street photography adventures and so forth. And then we go from that again to a Q&A, whether either I'm asking a question to the community, or the community is sending questions in to me to ask and go over and discuss on the podcast. So in episode number 5, we're going to go ahead and start with the trending section of the podcast. And as I look at my notes here, I had to think about what I've been seeing over the past weeks from at least the last podcast, on what I see trending in the photography community outside of gear, of course, and gear releases, whether it's a film camera that came out like the Pentax 17, or whether it's new bodies being announced like the Canon bodies, which I believe today they were announced, which is the R1 and the R3. But more talking about also, frame rates, this, that, and so forth. Things that I see that are trending. What are people doing out there, specifically in the arena of street photography? And for this episode, I wanted to discuss with you guys a trend that I see that's happening. And I don't know if it's a trend or if it should be just a method of how you capture your images. And that's whether you use a zoom or whether you use a prime to go out and shoot your images. So I'm going to hold up a revered zoom lens for the Fuji line, and that's the XF 18 to 55. This is technically a kit lens for Fuji, which nobody calls a kit lens, and if they do, they call it the best ever kit lens for any kit lens of any brand. It is just that good. This has a fast aperture of 2 dot, I think it's a 2 dot, and let me look at it just to make sure. And I should know this as much as I shoot this lens. That's what I thought. 2.8. So this at its widest is 2.8. That's its fastest on the wide end. On the long end, which is the 55 millimeter, which would be somewhere close to an 80 millimeter on full frame, it is a 4.0. So that's a beautiful variation, if you will, in the f-stops from its widest at 2.8 to its farthest end at 4.0. I've shot this on my X Pro 3 for street photography. And the reason why is I don't have to use a lot of lenses. That's like the biggest for me. That could be a big thing for a lot of folks, especially, with the most recent video that I put out on the channel talking about the final steps in getting comfortable or shooting street photography of people or people on the streets. And one of the things I talked about in the very first episode of that series was using a zoom lens, because it'll give you the ability to also, along with it covering a wide range of lenses, it'll give you the ability to stay at a safe distance, so a comfort level aspect of it by saying, hey, I don't want to get too close to any of my subjects, whether it's a person, whether it's anything on the streets, and a zoom lens will be able to get that for you. A zoom lens will also be able to allow you to take images of subjects without having to zoom with your feet or get closer or switch lenses. So one zoom lens, this is again an 18 to 55 millimeter on an APS-C lens. And what it covers for me, I have what, 6 lenses here. I have the Fuji 27 millimeter, which is a 2.8. I have the Fuji 18, which is I believe a 1.4, 18 millimeter. And look at how big that lens is and how big that zoom lens is. It's actually bigger than a zoom lens, because of that 1.4 on it. I also have a 23 millimeter 1.4. Look how big this guy is compared to how big, let me grab the right one, the zoom lens is. I have also over here that I would shoot street with, and I have shot street with, is grabbing the wrong lens here, is a 33, the new 33 millimeter. And I believe this one is a 1.4, if I'm correct. And yes, it's a 1.4. And if you notice, so I got some 1.4s here, and they're all either slightly bigger or the same size as the kit lens. And then last but not least is the 50 millimeter, which I have here, the 56. This is the 56 1.2, and this is even bigger and fatter, right? So that one zoom lens allows me to not have to switch between 6 lenses to cover the same distance that I have for Fuji. It allows me to get a variety of aspects based on the focal length on what is relatively the same size lenses, all of the lenses with the exception of the 27 and the that's it, with the exception of the 27. It's about the same size or smaller. So there is a big advantage to the size. There's a big advantage to the fact that it covers multiple lenses. And there's a big advantage to, of course, if I'm new to this or if I'm not, being able to not have to move my feet and get the subject, whether they're far away or close, all in one lens without having to change. This lens on the camera, it again has the same profile as the others. And this one's small. Now as you go into different frames or sensor sizes, that changes. My medium format camera, the zoom lenses are massive, so I wouldn't be using a zoom lens on that, and that kind of defeats the purpose. But for street photography, we generally tend to take cameras that are small body, and we tend to like small lenses on them. And I've been noticing a lot of folks using zoom lenses now for, say, even wedding photography, where they're not using the primes for the same reason. The zoom lenses have gotten better. They've gotten faster, which means they take in more light. I personally own the Nikon system. I have the Tamron 35 to 150. It is an f2 to 2.2, I believe, all the way through. That's phenomenal. Yes, it's big. It is very big. It's a massive, massive lens. It's got some weight to it, but it paired on a big camera, it balances itself out. But it stopped me from having to use every prime in there. So you're talking a 35, you're talking a 50, you're talking a 85, you're talking a 105. You're talking a 120. If you're looking at the Nikon, they have that superb 24 to 120 S lens. It covered it, and that's another lens people use, right, for the same reason. But I'm blowing away focal lengths. 135, I don't have to use. I go all the way to 150 with that lens, and I go from 2 to I believe 2.2, and it's phenomenal. So why wouldn't we want to do that for street photography? Especially if you can get, again, a lens as small as this kit lens is with optical stabilization on it. So if my camera body doesn't have stabilization, which my X Pro 3 doesn't, this is giving me an added benefit of some stabilization as well to help me with getting, shots when I want to more in focus and don't show any motion blur, right? Or shape. So what do you guys think? Do you see the trend? Do you think that's something that you see yourselves doing? Would you try it? Would you try using a zoom lens in place of your, say, 50 millimeter prime or your 35 millimeter prime or your 24 millimeter prime to do street photography. If you can get a 24 to 50, which there are a slew of them out there, with very fast apertures now and still keep a small profile, would you take that in place of going out with 3 primes and a camera body? It's kind of hard to beat now with the way we are using, or it's not using, but seeing the evolution of zoom lenses and how much better they've gotten, not only in their ability to be faster, but also the focal ranges that the manufacturers have given us. I mean, literally, it makes it hard in some cases to spend the money on a prime lens that will do only one thing for you, kind of a one-trick pony, than to have a zoom lens which has multiple lenses, so it becomes a more than a one-trick pony, and it's fast still. So let me know what you guys think. I think it's okay to do it. I really do. I do it myself from time to time when I don't want to be stuck with a focal length. But there are some benefits to being stuck with that focal length. Restrictions are nice. I'm just saying, I see a trend happening in other types of photography with the way zoom lenses are gone, and I definitely use it in street photography. Is it a worthy trend? Do you see it happening? I see it happening. So with that, we're going to go ahead into our next segment of the podcast, which is Who You Reppin'. So a little history on myself, and you'll understand why I picked the person I picked, and why, and not only because they're one of the greats. In fact, that this person is actually still alive and kicking and doing things. But I grew up in New York City. I grew up in Spanish Harlem, and then moved into Harlem as my family did as I got into my teen years, about to go off to college. And so, I grew up. I was raised in New York City. Wasn't born there, but grew up and raised in New York City. Have a fondness of all of the trials and tribulations I went through growing up in a big city like New York. From riding the school buses at a very young age going to school, to riding the trains in my teenage years going to high school. And as I got into this genre of street photography and looking at some of the greats, if you will, I gravitated, of course, without any doubt, to Bruce Davison. And I only have one of his books because that's the book, when I saw his work, that's the book that I wanted to get. I wanted to have that in my collection. I'm glad I got it. But let me give you a quick read on Mr. Davison and what he's about. Bruce London Davison is an American photographer. His documentary photos have been a celebrated and powerful depiction of the social climate of the United States. And he has a number of books out there showing that, especially with all of the things going on with the racial injustice at the times when he was taking his photographs. He was invited into the Magnum photos by Henry Cartier-Bresson while drafted in the Army in 1958. He is known for photographing communities, usually hostile to outsiders, and credits his skill of being invisible as a photographer to achieve this feat. He was born in September 1933 in Oak Park, Illinois, and he is still alive today. I will make sure I put his Instagram, in the description so you guys can follow him like I do. His studio manages his Instagram, which is great, but he still is up and doing his thing. He goes out on and I know that he recently had something where he was a part of an exhibit, and he posted on his Instagram, thanking everybody for the privilege of being part of the show. That's fantastic. It would be great, of course, if I can get back to New York and be able to do something that involved Mr. Davison. I would love to be able to do that. Let's get to the book, though. The book, of course, if you know anything about Mr. Bruce Davison, you know the book I'm going to put up. The book is Subway. So here's the cover, and I know I got some glare there, but there's the cover to Subway. And I'm going to flip to just one or two pictures here, because I truly believe if you're into street photography, you gotta get books from the people that you like, see what their style is about. This is why we do this Who You Reppin' section. And in the Subway, literally, he took the Subway, and hopefully you can see those, and he took images in the Subway. White man in the Subway going up into the Bronx. I went to high school in the Bronx, and the subway was no joke. When I was in high school, this is way before that. We had a lot of craziness going on. We had street gangs in New York, nothing like on the West Side, but we did have street gangs and stuff like that. Here's some more images. Hopefully you don't the glare, and I apologize for that for those watching the YouTube video of this. But I love the book. I love that he did it in color. Color really works. It tells the emotion of what's going on at the time. You know, I mentioned that earlier about in another video about why you shoot in black and white and color, and I learned that from the previous episode we did with Gordon Parks. You know, what got me the most about the book with Gordon Parks is that his use of color to depict the emotion that's going on at the time. And not using black and white, which gives it more of a timeless, could happen anytime. You don't really see the reds and the flush in the face, the emotion, the tears, if there were tears and stuff. And Mr. Davison did the same thing with this book, and he literally captured the life of how things happen in the subway of New York. This brought back a lot of memories going to school in New York, from the crowded subway stations to getting to, you could see the economic level changes. And honestly, still to this day, you can too. Going from downtown in the Wall Street area all the way up through into the Bronx. Same thing as you went and took different lines heading into Queens, heading into Brooklyn. You can see how, and again, that's something you can see now, just even in the community I live now. When I go from one city to another, you can see the economic difference in the road, how the road changes, and some are better than others depending where you go. And I see that a lot coming in and out of Detroit, which is unfortunate because people don't think about that. But as photographers, you know, I picks up things, and that's one of the things I picked up when growing up in New York was you can always tell the economic viability of a place based on its transportation system, from the roads to the vehicles. And you know, when you were on the trains back then, they were littered with graffiti, and he has a number of pictures in here with that. But I find the most amazing thing about this, like I said earlier in the start of this section, is that he was a white man going up into some pretty seedy areas, and he captured some wonderful pictures. I mean, other than the feat of him being able to be invisible, you have to have a certain kind of people skills, if you will, to be able to go into a situation knowing nobody and be able to come out of it with a wonderful experience. Now, I don't know, I can't say I've done enough research on Mr. Davison to see if he ever talks about any situations where it did get a little hairy for him and it didn't quite work as well. But I know from my experiences in New York City, going through the subway, different times of the day, as I graduated from college and came back home, there was times that I did not want to be in the subway in specific areas, for sure, on specific lines, going back home because of, you know, the fear of something happening. You know, that was all a part about street smarts. So this is where, when I look at his work and I look at what he did a lot of portrait work, which is the type of work I like to do. He did a lot of images of people where he asked for the image, for sure. And I believe in a lot of cases, and in other cases, he snapped the image of them in a kind of unobtrusive style of photography, and was able to get some nice images, really nice images. And then he took raw images too. And raw, when I mean by raw, he took images that show life as it was, not doctored up, not the nice shiny things. He took pictures of it all. So what I learned from this style of photography is, one, you gotta represent it as it is. Document what you see in front of you as it is. Take it all in. Take in the good, the bad, the ugly, the rawness of doing street photography. I also learned that, like Mr. Davison, I too want to make sure I'm invisible. I'll make sure that, you know, I'm not interrupting the scene, and that I can go in, take some images, and it's like, oh, nobody really notices me or cares about what I'm doing because I'm not coming off threatening. I have a level of people skills and street smarts I've worked on over the years, from growing up in New York City to teaching too, which is something else you guys now know about me. I used to teach. And you start to learn about behaviors of people, about behaviors of the economic levels you're dealing with, and you learn how to maneuver. You learn how to adapt, and that's what I credit for that skill that Mr. Davidson has. He knows how to adapt to the environment and become invisible, and I've learned how to do that myself. But I've also learned that sometimes it's nice not to be invisible, and then also, become a part of that environment so you're accepted and can then do the street photography images. Because I've been everywhere from, again, New York City growing up, to taking images in Detroit, in areas you probably shouldn't be in no matter what color you are, to areas and affluent areas where not too many people my color are. And I've been able to blend in. I've been able to be accepted in the way I maneuver so that I can get wonderful street images. I've handed out my information everywhere I've gone, and that brings up another thing too. I've learned from this is especially when getting into street photography, as a male street photographer, I've learned that it's nice to not only have a social media account that you can show somebody, but also business cards, because I want to show folks that I'm not a creep. So there you go, little life hack. If you want to make sure that people think you're not some creep just taking pictures of people on the street or things on the street, it's good to have social media and have an account showing your images, showing your work, a talking piece. I've actually gotten photo work, believe it or not, doing that. So Mr. Davidson is who we are repping. And I put down Harlem, New York City, because that's where I grew up, and that's where he took a good number of his photos in Harlem, also going up into the Bronx, I believe, on the subways. And my favorite book of all the books he's published is Subway by Bruce Davidson. Guys, I think if you have not seen this book, hit the library. If you ain't trying to buy it yet, go check this book out. Definitely hit his Instagram. Like I said, I'll put it in the description. Check out what he's got posted. He's got some of his iconic street photography photos, as well as some of his iconic photos documenting the climate of the time on his Instagram page. You won't be disappointed. So there you go. Now on our next section, where we talk about gear as it's related to street photography, everything and anything about photography gear as it relates to street photography. I was asked something on a recent video that now guys, I watch YouTube. I'm an avid watcher of YouTube. I just don't have the YouTube channel like most people. I also watch YouTube for entertainment, to the point where it's most of my entertainment sometimes. And I posted on a YouTube channel in the comments. I believe it was for Matt Day, and he was talking about something in and around film photography. I believe it was Matt Day, but either way. But I posted about how well I like the images for whoever it was, and how well I like the film images in digital, and how the comparison. And I got a response from an individual saying, "Hey, do you shoot digital?" And or film as well, because the person follows my channel. They said they hadn't seen me shoot film in a while, and I was like, yes, I actually shoot film and digital. So I thought, I don't know how many people do it, but there are some benefits to it. So I'm gonna tell y'all right now, my X100V is my favorite camera when it comes to going out and shooting street photography. Behind this would be the X Pro 3. I love what I get from a digital camera. I love that digital cameras allow me to be fast. I love that it allows me to be a little carefree with the shutter. I love that it allows me to come back and be efficient in getting my creativity out on my social media platform, my YouTube platform, fast. I can actually, with the use of the app, and most of the brands have apps now that are decent enough to work with their newer cameras, Bluetooth wise, and be able to upload JPEG, if not raw images, to a camera app that you can edit and then post to your social media. This allows for fast interaction. It allows for fast interaction, literally. I waste no time with digital. When I go out with my film camera, and here's one of my favorite point and shoot film cameras, to the point that I have a second one right here for those watching the YouTube channel. This one's a wide and this one's a standard. So the wide one has, I believe, a 28 millimeter lens on it, and I'm in the process of fixing the back door here, but I believe this has a 28 millimeter lens on there. This one's a 38, so a little tighter than 35. And then they have another one, which I might get just so I have all three of them, because I really like the Fujifilm Class, KLASSE line of cameras. They're Fuji's premium point and shoot film cameras, and there's a slew of them out there. I got this one as my first one, loved it. Went ahead and got that one, which had some, again, had some damage on it that I'm fixing, so it was way cheaper than buying a used one that's fully operational, because these things can be pricey, like most film cameras. And then they have another one that's a Class S. So that's the Class W for wide. There's a Class S, which is a 38, I believe, but it has better features. It allows you to change the ISO so you can put different films. This one will only shoot film with the metal and black, as you can see for those watching the YouTube channel. The coding for the ISO, if it doesn't have coding, it sets it to 100 ISO, and bam, there you go. But film slows you down. Even with this point and shoot, it's 36 frames. I'm more methodical about how I shoot with this. I take my time. I'm more focused. I pay more attention to what's going on, and the reason why I'm out there is more to the point, more to the front of my head of what am I doing out here. Let me make sure I'm getting what I'm going after, because I have limited shots. Now I can have rolls of film, which I generally have 2 to 3 rolls with me, 1 in the camera and 2 spare, depending on how long I'm out shooting. And it's a different experience. One day about 3 years ago, and it was before I got this, I had a Canon AE 1 program, which I still have. I took that with me along with my X Pro 3. I had the X Pro 3 shooting digital, so forth, and then was like, I'm enjoying this, I'm having fun, but I decided to go ahead and whip out the film camera and slow myself down. I wound up shooting the longest I had shot in that year. I was out for 3.5 hours shooting. I had a blast. The benefit of both taught me something. It taught me about how I want to shoot when I'm out shooting. It taught me about what I should shoot depending on how I want to shoot when I'm out shooting. I didn't think about that as much as I did when I was just only shooting digital, or I was just only shooting film. When I went out, I was either one or the other, and the focus was one or the other. When I go with both, what it said to me was, how long are you going to be out here? What do you not that I never thought of time before. I just went out, did some stuff, and when I got bored, I was done. This forces me to say, no, you're not done yet. You're going to shoot both. You're going to shoot them at the same time, and I have done that. I've shot it where I've gone between cameras, actually between shots, because I wanted a look on the film that I couldn't get on the camera. I wanted to slow myself down for this, what I saw was about to happen, and capture it on film instead of on digital. I saw something happening fast, and I didn't want to just be stuck with the film camera, and I wanted to switch to the digital camera and be able to capture what I wanted to capture with the speed and ninja-like skills that I can have with this digital camera. So I shoot them both. Because it helped broaden my creative style. It said that understand that when I go out, it's not about the camera as much as it is about, one, the experience, me going out and just enjoying myself shooting with film and digital, and two, about what I'm learning with in this case, the broad set of tools I'm giving myself to shoot with, not the limiting set of tools. Now that I know I'm going to be shooting film and digital, where am I going to go? What's the look I want to have with the film? What's the look I want to have with the digital? I just had a blast. It's just something new that I was able to do. With that though, it taught me something too about what to bring with me. You know, when it comes to the film camera, I'm either shooting with this guy with a 38, or I was shooting with a 28, or I was shooting with a 35. So when I brought my X Pro 3 out, and this brings me back to the first topic that we talked about, I actually brought the kit zoom with me because I didn't want to have to change lenses on that camera because I wasn't changing lenses on the film camera. It gave me a fixed focal length on the film camera to go after for specific things. And then if I wanted to capture it with the digital, I had to zoom on to get to that focal length and do it. Or I had to zoom on to give me a wide range of focal lengths to be able to capture whatever I wanted in that focal length range and not worry about having to have either the same focal length I had for the film or have to run after stuff because I didn't have something that can reach. It gave me the abilities that a zoom lens will give you on the camera, on the digital, that I was able to take advantage of, that I would never use a zoom lens on a film camera because of, one, they're not that great. That's why nobody used them like they did. And two, it gave me the ability that if I wanted to get personal or close, I had this guy. If I wanted to slow it down and get more focused, I had this guy. It helped keep me in perspectives for the style of street photography I was doing, which generally is mostly shooting people on the street and then looking for the, smart photos where things happen that you didn't think was going to happen and you don't believe unless somebody captured it on an image. So I like to shoot both, which then says too, I want to make sure that gear wise, I'm not going to pigeonhole myself with the film camera and the digital camera. So as you heard me say, I will generally make sure that one, like say if I take the X100V out, this is a set focal length, just like the film camera would be. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to put the digital teleconverter on so that I can zoom with the zoom ring and get different focal lengths with this and treat it like it's a camera with a kit lens on it. Or I may, just to give myself different perspective, will have the the conversion lens on the front of it, and I'll have the wide because I like the wide more when I do that, and then still use the digital converter to give me those zoom ranges, with the focal length. So I will tend to use the digital camera with some type of ability to jump between focal lengths, and then I'll have, of course, the film camera with its fixed focal length and the abilities or capabilities and the benefits that film gives me, working that angle and then switching over when I need to the digital and vice versa when I can't get what I want from the other. It just was a blast. I highly recommend you guys try it. I highly recommend you get out there with a film camera and a digital camera and just go for it. Just walk around and have a blast shooting them both. I even did it one time shooting my instant film along with a digital camera, and I was handing the instant film out to people, and that was a blast. So with the next and the final section of the podcast, the Q&A, I have yet again a question I want to ask of the community to get you guys thinking about what you would do. Definitely hit the comments, guys, on any of the sections. Let me know what you think. Give me your feedback. Tell me what's on your mind when it comes to all of the different things that we discuss in the podcast in the comments. Definitely hit that subscribe button if you're on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button on Apple Play, on Google Play. Those I'm on those platforms as well. And let me know what questions you guys have as well. So here's a question I'm gonna present to you guys, and hopefully you like the question from last episode about super fandom and do you buy stock if to make you a super fan. Is it beneficial to shoot multiple brands or get locked in on one brand? So you guys know I shoot multiple brands, so you kind of know where I'm going on my answer. But this is a question for the community. And here's the reason why my answer is, multiple brands, because when I was only shooting Fuji, I was shooting the APS-C line until I got the GFX medium format line, effectively shooting with two very distinct formats in one brand, very different cameras. It was almost like literally shooting two brands. I still feel it's that way anyway, because they're that different of cameras, even though they're under the Fuji brand moniker. And the reason is because of the what the tools can provide you, what the tools give you, and the ability to be able to create the content that you create, whether that's images, whether that's video, whether you're doing it for YouTube, whether you're doing it for pay or not. I believe that you go after shooting whatever brand or brands you want if the tool gets you what you need to be able to create. Now, I went to the Nikon because I was doing a project. It was a paid project. I needed a full frame. I had previously I started with Nikon APS-C, and I said, you know what, this thing is big enough for me. This was a really big job for me. It was the biggest I've had to date. And I said, I'm going to go ahead and get this camera and this lens to do this job. And if I like it, I'll keep it. If not, it's business expense. We'll see about, doing something else with it and keep it moving. And I wind up keeping it because the medium format sensor of the Nikon camera gave me the ability to create in a different way that I can provide for clients as well as for myself, for work that I do, the passion work, if you will, passion projects that I do. So I believe that if the brand you're using, if you're a single brand focused photographer, videographer, if you're getting everything you need out of that tool, that brand, keep shooting them. No issues, no problem. Work with it, learn the tools, learn how to use them. Not all of them are 100% perfect. All of them come out with new things. Some things they're good at and some things they're not. And everybody's blowing me up here, so I apologize. But what you're going to want to do again is see if you can get everything out of that one brand. And when you can't, don't feel bad about getting what you can get out of another brand. That is the plus to having the variety that we have in life. If you can't get or achieve the goal you're trying to get to, well, the tools you have, you go get the tools you need to achieve that goal. And for me, I'm achieving what I need to get with all of the different gear that I have here, from the June light that I got working over here that cut off on me because I was testing the battery on it to see how long it would last, to the Godox mic that I'm using for this talking headpiece for this podcast, to the Fuji cameras, to the Nikon cameras, to the GoPro, to the whatever, right? It's allowing me to get what I need for the content I'm putting out, whether it's for paid or passion or pleasure. So do that. Do what you need to do. Get the things you need to get. In this case, do multiple brands to get your product out, your creativity out, your goals met. So with that, guys, that is the podcast for this episode. I will see you guys on the next cast. Have a good one.